Welcome to the All of You podcast, where we believe healthy relationships are created by growing individually and pursuing a healthy relationship with yourself.
So let's take a deep breath. Settle in and grow together. So a year ago, when we were starting this podcast, I told you I would do it, but there's one subject I would never, under any conditions, talk about on the podcast. And last night, we had a conversation about sex that was so good. I actually said to you, I think we should talk about this on the podcast.
Yeah, it was your idea. I was actually shocked because we had another topic. We were going to talk about red flags in relationships, and we might still put one out about that, like record another day. But I was like, do you still want to talk about sex? And you said, yeah, let's go for it.
Did you think I was going to change my mind?
100%.
Really?
Yeah.
That's
yeah,
funny.
because it's just it's a stretch for me, and I'm usually free game on any subject, and I'm nervous. I'm like nervous right now to talk about it. I just prayed like a heavy prayer to try to just give it up and let it go and let it be what it is, and know that this conversation is needed. And I could have used this conversation a couple of years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, when I was a kid growing up. Can I say like,
How we got here?
yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
So last night when we were talking about it, I asked you, what area have I grown in the most since we started dating? And you said sex.
Yeah, by far, I would say that that's you've grown in so many areas and changed so much and really matured a lot. But that's the area that I think I've seen the most growth in. And your change in that area was probably the biggest catalyst for health in our relationship.
Yeah, as long as we were struggling in that area, there was always going to be this like Achilles heel, you know? And I don't think we would be fruitful in the podcast. Like, I don't think we could be relationship coaching if we didn't heal this area. And I say heal because it's such a complex subject. But I think this more has to do with me than you even. Because I do think
I think that the work was mostly with you, but that doesn't mean I didn't have my own work that I did. But I think for the purpose of this episode, your work is more important to talk through than mine. Mine can be backburnered. If we have time, I can go into it. But the reason why I'm actually willing to talk about sex on the podcast, which I never thought I would do, is I think that so many couples are silently struggling in their sex lives. And not only that, I think a lot of women are unhappy but aren't vocalizing it. And I would venture to say men as well. And it feels like a lot of the times, like if you don't think you can fix it, you just kind of like accept it, and then you accept a poor sex life, which honestly is so sad. And that's really the heart of why I'm like, okay, we should probably share a little bit about this.
Yeah, and I think a caveat, we'll stop caveating, but I think that a caveat is this isn't about sex. Like, it's not about, it has nothing to do with the positions that you do. It has nothing to do with how pleasurable it is for each partner. And that's that, I guess, like maybe we'll get into it first. So
I think we should start really at the beginning of your story and how sex was how you viewed sex as a young kid.
Yeah, and it's pretty. I won't go like in great detail. I'll just give like a timestamp. So like early on, under the age of 10, I would say I was exposed to some things that were kind of traumatizing for me. Just neighborhood kids, like showing me porn for the first time, and it not in a way of like pleasurable for me. Like I was grossed out because I was so young, and just didn't really grow up with no dad around. I would say I didn't grow up with like a healthy instilled understanding of sex. So education was non-existent for me. So I didn't really have a correct view of it from the get-go, I would say. And I was just kind of watching everybody, watching neighborhood kids, watching friends, and as we got into later elementary, junior high, I would say that I was really early on overly sexualized, I guess, from a young age, And I didn't really understand why. I didn't know what was going on with me. So then my junior year of high school, I was already grown up Christian, but I became like a really heavy, I would say, evangelical Christian on very quickly on the route to be like a youth pastor. I was a college group pastor for a bit. So as I navigated from childhood through teen years, I would say that there was two polarizing Daves. One that was kind of leaning into like over sexualized, and then on the other hand, later in high school, I was white knuckling like Christian kid. Sex was bad, right? So I would say that as a kid, I was overindulgent, and then in my later teen years, I was white knuckling it. And then I got married at the age of 20, and we did not have sex until I got married. So it was like a very like strict sexual path at that point. And then in my later 20s, I kind of deconstructed this view of sex as like white knuckling it. And I would say that I got a divorce, and I viewed sex very plainly again, like almost overindulge it. I was probably leaning towards, and it was all about pleasure. And then we linked up, and when we started talking about sex and we started having sex, should I say that or no?
Yeah, I feel like my parents have probably turned this episode off by now.
Okay. So when we first started talking about our sex life, it was very clear that there was some issues, and we didn't understand them at all. And I would say pretty quickly into our relationship, I had to do some work around sex. But I also had to do work around insecurities. I also had to do work around just overall self-value and self-worth issues that I was working through after my divorce. And in the route of doing that, I went deeper and deeper in, because I was so confused by sex. Like it just didn't make sense to me how we could have so many healthy dynamics in our relationship, but sex was still kind of a fight sometimes. It felt like a mental chess game we were always playing, and I didn't quite understand it. And then a buddy of mine who I hired as a coach gave me a book, and this book completely changed my view of it. And I would say that was like not final, there could be more things that I go into, but that was the big rock. That was the big boulder that I had to remove so I could see it clearly in our sex life. So then we were able to start to engage with each other with a lot more open conversation. We were able to see a healthy dynamic for us sexually, and it felt good for both of us and felt right, and it felt balanced. And so the deeper rooted issue, like I think men struggle with quite a few things when it comes to sex. They struggle with, and women can struggle with these same things, but I think it's more common in the man. But very much could be a woman struggling with these things. Frequency, how often is it happening? is it lasting long enough? Like there's like a core belief that it needs to be a certain amount of time, you know? Um, and positions, like are you playful in the bedroom? And so if you're not playful enough, there could be core beliefs around these things. So I think frequency, length of time, and playfulness, I would say, are huge core beliefs for anyone that has an ego around sex. And if you have an ego around sex, you're creating an expectation. And then now there's this expectation. Maybe both people, both partners are on that same level of expectation. So they feel like they have a great sex life. But what happens when the wife gets pregnant and doesn't want to have it as much? Or what happens when somebody gets sick? Or what, you know what I mean? Like when you create these expectations for sex in your mind, it really sets you up for failure and you can get triggered. But it triggers such a deep wound in some of us. So for me, it was like a really deep wound. Like if you weren't having sex with me, there's a lot of things that I could say and narratives that would spin off in my brain that made me feel unloved. I felt like invalidated. I felt like I was comparing to, the world and what maybe other couples. So then I felt like we weren't having as good of our relationship wasn't as good as other people's or things like that. And just like insecurity in yourself, when you're talking about your looks or what you wear or just your skin or your eye color or whatever it is, you can have an insecurity around your partnership and your sex life if you have these expectations. And a lot of people think the route to beating these is to accomplish them, like goals. Like if you're struggling in the bedroom and you and your partner are able to have some breakthroughs and do some new fun positions, or you now schedule sex twice a week and you're hitting that benchmark, your sex life is now good. And I would say that's a trap. That's a trap that's waiting to explode, in my opinion. It was for me because it didn't matter if we hit the benchmark. Like something was missing that I knew deep down was missing, and something I was craving, this connection to you, just nothing ever fulfilled it. And I'll ask anyone, like, if you feel like your sex life is good, wait 5 days without having sex. Is it still good? Wait 10 days. Is it still good? Like, is it only as good as the last time you had it? So if you don't have sex for 20 days or a month, if we don't have sex for this next year for some reason, I can now, from the place that I'm at now, say we have a great sex life. And I know it. Like, it would be hard, it would be a challenge, but like our sex life and our sexual connection does not rest on how many times we did it last week anymore, you know? And that's just different. And I think that as a man, you have an ego and there's just a lot wrapped up here. There's so many ways that this comes out sideways in relationships, and there's so much porn addiction. There's so many ways that it just creates a lack of trust in the couple and a lack of connection. And yes, you're having sex, but there's these outward things that are telling you it's good because you did these positions, and it wasn't actually like the inward opening of your hearts to connect, And I think you feel that emotionally, you feel that sexually.
So you read this book and it was by David Dita, The Superior Man, right?
The Superior Man, The Way of the Superior
The Way
Man.
of the Superior Man. What clicked for you in reading that book?
Oh, so much. It's a great book, but I think if I would only recommend it to a man if he's ready at that point in time to receive it, because I had done a lot of work already around sex. So I would say, like, in the beginning of our relationship, so let me continue the story, I guess, with where we were when we met. Was I felt like I had done a lot of work, but I hadn't, but then some things were still coming up. So when we wouldn't have sex for a while, I would get insecure, or I would I don't want to paint the picture. Well, I'm not going to worry about what people think. I'm going to say just what happened in me. So when we wouldn't have sex for a while, I would get kind of triggered and I would get a little bummed and sad, and just the feelings would come up. I'd get in it. And when I say triggered, I don't mean angry. I mean overwhelming feelings, like feelings that would kind of make me not be in reality. So then the way that I would talk to you about it had leaky energy. The way that I would talk to you about it had an energy of triggered, because when you get triggered, you revert back to childhood wounds. And so there was this leaky energy of, I need sex, like I need it. And that was unattractive to you. So as a man, it's like normal in our society, I think, for men to say like, oh, of course you need sex. Like sex is like a need in a relationship. It's like, yeah, it is a need, but is it? Like, you're okay. Like you'll be okay if you don't have sex for a month. You'll be okay if you don't have sex for 10 years. Like you're going to live. You're not going to die, you know? And I think that we just normalize this need, like a baby needing milk. Sex is not food. You will live. And I think that when you come from such a desperate place already as a man, and you're like creating this expectation that it's a need of survival, a woman immediately is unattracted to that. Then if you get triggered and you're in this relationship, especially if you're in a committed relationship, and I think that this is so common for relationships, is the man and the woman are committed. The man might not be connecting emotionally, but he's unaware of why or how, you know? And the woman then isn't sexually attracted because she needs emotional connection to open her up sexually. And then the man is frustrated by the lack of sex and then feels trapped. And so he doesn't know what to do with that. And this is the spot where I think so many men and relationships are in. And this is the key point in the interaction that was happening between us, and I think a lot of relationships. Not every relationship, but a lot of them. The man then speaks up about it, or makes a passive aggressive comment, or doesn't handle it right, and it turns the woman off more. Because if you are getting childish about it, women don't want to have sex with children. So if you're acting like a child, don't expect that that's the way that you're going to get sex. And so women subconsciously, like, they're testing you. Men, your woman is testing you. I'm sorry that this is the case, but she doesn't want to have sex with you if you are acting childish because you haven't gotten sex. So if you haven't gotten sex in a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, your only move to get sex is to act like a man. Because if you come from a place of need, now you can speak up those needs and you can learn how, and that's a whole another topic. But doing it like a man, not like a little child whining about it. And so as soon as you just put the pressure on, so if we hadn't had sex in a while and then I kind of blame you or shame you for it or make it your fault,
Or really apply like any degree of pressure.
Immediately I'm losing. I'm already losing the battle. And I didn't know that. Like no one taught me. I didn't know. And I think a lot of men don't know this, and that's why we're having the conversation. But that's not the route. You know, it's not the route. And the route is through emotional connection. And how you connect emotionally is I can actually emotionally connect to you while asking you to open up sexually at some point in the near future. I can literally say, babe, I miss you. I'm feeling a little bit like I'm desiring you and I'm nervous how to approach you. I'm speaking feeling words. Do you hear that? I'm saying I'm nervous. I'm saying I'm scared to approach you about it. I'm feeling like I don't want to upset you. I'm just speaking from a place of like, hey, I'm feeling like I want to connect with you and I'm not sure how, and I'm opening up emotionally. So I'm not blaming you for our sex life. I'm not blaming you for where we're at. I'm connecting with you emotionally. I'm not saying, and I'll do this with you. I'll say, I'd love to connect with you in the next few days. I don't say I need to connect with you now because that's a child. I need food. I want a snack right now. I'm impatient, right? A man goes, you look great tonight. I'm so attracted to you and I would love to connect with you soon. And we use the word connect because that's what it means to us. It's not this just like fulfilling this pleasurable desire because that's like a child. So as I've matured sexually, I've realized that you don't want me to treat it like a candy bar, like I want a dessert, you know? You want me to treat it like a meal. And when you have, and this is like such a key point that I hope any man listening can understand that, and this is my evolvement. I'm speaking about myself. Like I used to view sex like ice cream. Like it just tasted so sweet and I wanted this quick fix kind of thing, right? Now I view it like a steak dinner. And I'm going to receive that steak dinner and I'm going to fill my body up with this meal. And now I'm going to be able to sustain a period of time without food because I nourished my body. And some people don't eat steak, but you get the point. Like a nourishing meal, you know, not like a dessert. Because what happens when you eat dessert and you eat ice cream? You just want more of it and more of it. It's insatiable. But how do you get to the point where you actually can feel like it nourishes you? You have to start treating it like that. As a man, as you start treating it like that, then the woman actually can open up enough where it actually does nourish you. But if you treat it like a candy bar or a sweet treat, it will just be that. It will just be like, yeah, we had sex, but I can't wait till we have it next time, you know, or you want it the next day, or you want it 3 days later, or you want it, you know, you need it frequent because it's this frequency game that you're playing. And that's just not, as I've read about women, and that's just not how it works, you know? So I think a big part of it too is understanding the other person's experience, like talking about it. And me getting to a point where I was understanding your sexual experience and caring about it, not just in the bedroom, not just your sexual experience when we're doing it, but like, what is it like for you throughout the day when you're not feeling in the mood? Like, what is your sexual mood and your frequency and your cycle, you know? Like how does that all fit in? Or like how does it fit in when we have the kids and it's rowdy that night? And like I think a lot of men, they put the kids to bed and they're like, can we have sex now? And that you're not going to get the thing that you really want. You might get sex, but your woman will literally be self-abandoning to just fulfill your pleasurable needs so you can have ice cream, and then it just doesn't fill you up anyway. You didn't get the thing you wanted anyway.
Yeah, and I think from like a woman's perspective, it feels like, okay, now the kids are finally in bed. I've picked up the house, the dishes are done. And then when the man's like expecting sex, I already add it to like, oh, the next thing on the to-do list. I got to go check the sex box. And when you're just checking the box because you're like, oh, like met all the kids' needs today, took care of them. Now I got to go take care of my husband or my partner, boyfriend, whatever. It's viewed through this lens of a task instead of this sacred, divine, holy experience of connection. And it takes all of the beauty out of it. And it's, for me, it's very much like when I would have sex with you to check the box, it was like, one more thing to do. Okay. Wasn't really that enjoyable because it was just something I had to get done instead of something I get to do, want to do. And there's a massive energetic shift that happened when sex was no longer something I had to check off my list and something that like I wanted to meet your needs sexually because you met my needs emotionally, and I had it to give because I felt fulfilled in my emotional needs, and therefore I was like, I want to give to you out of an abundance and not out of this like scarcity and place of like I'm depleted and just need to get something else done. Then energetically in the bedroom, it was so much better, passionate, loving. And really, the word I would use is like sacred. So, this is kind of a funny tangent, but when you shifted your view of sex and the way that you approached it, the energy that you brought towards me made like shifted the energy in the bedroom, because it was all of a sudden it went from a task self abandonment energy, really, to a safe, loving energy. And that was, and it's a felt thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that there's so many steps of evolvement that it took for me personally to get there that I'd like to go into, because this isn't a light switch. If you were, like I was explaining, I was brought up, the reason for going back into like my views of sex throughout my life and how it's shifted is, if you weren't brought up in a way to balance sex in a healthy way and your view of it is off, it's not a light switch to just snap your fingers and you're going to view it correctly. It's going to be a little bit of a battle. It's like if your diet is donuts and ice cream all day, you might go on a diet, but it's going to take a while before you enjoy that new diet. So for me, this journey looked like, first and foremost, I realized if you're having sex with me to check a box, it's not the sex I actually want anyway, because I'm not feeling like you're into me. I'm not feeling the connection. I'm not feeling the spark and I'm not getting the same experience, And what makes sex good? Sex is really good when we both want it. We both want it. We both desire it. We both desire each other, and we're present in the moment, and there's no expectations of what we're going to do, of anything. We're both giving ourselves to each other fully. I'm not requiring a certain position that doesn't feel good for you. Like it's a thing we're doing. We're both together in it, Like, have you ever been on a trip with someone and they don't really want to do the things you want to do, and like it's just you're constantly like pulling in different directions, and so it's not very flowy. Like that's not good sex when you're pulling in different directions. You want to pull together and go with a flow of and be on the same frequency. And so how we got there to experience this sex that now I'll call like a meal for us is, I had to first and foremost realize, like, you don't have to have sex with me. So if you're not having sex with me, I need to understand what I'm doing. That's not like, I need to go inward. I need to look at like, what have I been doing lately? If it's either something I'm doing or it's something you're doing. Like maybe you are really stressed and anxious and aren't sleeping well. Like you're not in your normal flow, and so sex isn't becoming a priority. And like, don't just come and blame you for us not having sex, but like help you get to a healthier place. Because if I'm coming at it because I only want you to be healthy so that we have a good sex life, then that's the wrong motive. Like, our motives have to be clear here. If your motive is to get a certain position or just get off, your partner isn't feeling a part of the experience, and you're not actually getting the connection that you desire deep down. So are you, like, I would say, like, I didn't know that I was craving connection. I thought I was just craving sex. but actually deep down, we crave connection. And when a guy watches porn and gets off to a screen, he's not getting the connection he thinks his body's tricked, you know? And so, yeah, sure, you're getting the pleasure or the experience, but it's fake, it's false. So to realize the root deep down that you actually desire, like that's the first step, is like realizing deep down our bodies are built to crave the connection that happens in sex. But if we're having sex and the connection isn't happening, we're eating ice cream. We're not eating a nourishing meal. And so this is the first thing that I made up in my mind at some point. Like, it became clear to me. I was like, I don't want ice cream. And I had to get to the point, and this was so hard for me, where you would try to have sex with me or you would come on to me in some way, and I would actually check in with you first, and I would go, hey, I want a meal. I don't want a snack. I don't want ice cream. So are you coming to me right now to check a box? Is it like like our night is like, it's not that late and there's time for it? And then if you were like, I'm kind of in the mood, but I'm kind of not, and I'm probably just checking a box out of guilt, and I want to like make sure that we meet this need of yours, kind of, I'm like, I'm good. And I would tell you like, hey, I'm good. I don't want the ice cream.
Yeah, it took a really long time for me to actually believe that.
Trust that.
And
Yeah.
trust is the right word, to trust that.
But we went like a year of me doing that.
If I wasn't in the mood, that was okay. If I wasn't in the mood for 3 weeks, you were actually okay.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because subconsciously, it wasn't really on purpose. I went through periods of testing you where I would just like be like, nope, not in the mood. Nope, not in the mood. And it was like almost like I was waiting for you to like be upset.
Mm-hmm.
So I could be like, see, you like, it sounds like really like I was playing a game when I say it like that, but I wasn't. Maybe I was, but it was very much subconscious. It wasn't like this thought of like, I'm going to test him and see if he really is okay. And then once I tested you enough to where I really truly believed it, then it was like the boulder was really removed, and it was like, now I wanted it more because it was no longer like, it no longer felt like an obligation.
Well, I would also say like I felt like I actually became a man and not a boy. And that's hard for me to admit, but like if your sex drive is like a boy, you're craving it for an ego. But if your sex drive is like a man, you're taking care of your woman in a connecting way, you know, and you're nourishing, you're looking out for a healthy sex life for your partnership, and you're not just trying to get your rocks off. And gosh, that's hard. Like, I just want to have like I don't want to sit here and act like some superior man that's like, I'm above sex. Like as a boy who wasn't raised with a father, who literally had no direction for sex, no upbringing, no healthy sex, and then went to evangelical church where they said like all things sex are bad and you're going to hell if you masturbate.
Shame.
Yeah, the shame that I had around sex, like it was insane. But what got me was when we met, I was already in a spot where I had been through a divorce, and I never intended to even date someone again in a serious way. If I'd already hurt people by dating them, like I'd already experienced the pain of what it's like to have one night stands. And I just was in this place where I was like, I don't want to do this unhealthy. I'm sick and tired of having these black spots in the relationship. So like I'm on a hunt to do this well. And if I don't know how to do this well, I'm going to read a freaking book to figure it out, you know? And I just started reading and learning and taking in all this information where I understood that as a man, I'm to kind of lead the way in this area because I'm the pursuer by nature. Like everyone has different beliefs about masculine and feminine. I don't really care to argue that. It's not, but I feel like I'm the pursuer here. You know, I'm talking about us. I don't know what works for everybody else, but this is about us and our experience to hopefully help some other people. And I would be the pursuer, and I would get insecure if I pursued you 2 or 3 times and it was a no. And so then I would get like resentful, and this resentful energy would come up. So I had to learn to really, really first and foremost in my mind be like, do I want sex or do I want a healthy sex life? What do I want more? Because I could keep having sex with you. I could keep you. You would check the box if I really asked for that enough times or whatever.
Well, actually, it was this like very subconscious dance where I was like, I know if he asks more than this amount of times and I say no, then he's going to
Get frustrated.
And resentful. So I've got X amount of no's I can give. And so I'd like literally be like, oh, I can't really say no, or else like I have to do it this time because he's going to be, upset, whatever. And then I would, but from a place of self-abandonment.
Yeah. And I mean, the men aren't taking the trust fall, you know, like it does take a trust. Like I had to trust fall first and go, I'm going to say no to the ice cream and wait for the meal, even though I'd never seen what a meal looks like. I didn't know that there was a deep, but I trusted the book I read. I trusted other people, you know, who had said this. But I had never experienced the connection that comes from, like, it's just another level of connection and it's another level of safety. The sex is going to be really good if your woman feels really, really safe with you. The sex is going to be really good for the woman and the man because the woman feels really safe. So she's going to feel really secure and be able to open up more in her heart and emotionally.
Yeah, I think actually the word I would use is surrender.
Yeah.
When you feel so safe that you can fully surrender and like fully open up, that's when you reach the bliss point of sex.
But correct me if I'm wrong here for your experience, but you could only surrender when you knew like I wasn't going to take advantage of that, like when you could fully trust me.
Correct.
And then it's such a mind-blowing thing. Like men crave a woman to fully surrender to them. They crave that. And they think that that's in positions.
I think some men want women to surrender in a cheap way, which is like, they'll do whatever I want, any position I want. But what the meal sex is surrender in this way of like,
I'm yours.
Yes. And it's like, I'm
a
not,
spiritual surrender,
exactly.
I'll say. It's a deeper surrender that you can feel. And when you get that, you actually don't need the positions. You don't care about the whole pleasure thing is just this facade. It's just this facade. It's just this ice cream. The deeper connection is actually the more pleasurable thing. But in order to get the deeper connection, the woman needs to trust that the man's not just there for the pleasure. And so you have to take a trust fall. Give up the pleasure. Just give it up. Realize, and I had to hear this from another man, so hopefully this will come across well to somebody. But if you give up the pleasure and like give up sex in your relationship, it will come back to you 1,000-fold in a deeper, more meaningful way. It won't ever come back to you the way that you thought of it, the way that the porn looks, the way that the whatever, it won't come back in that cheap way, but it will come back in a such bigger, fulfilling way that then it's almost like now I wonder sometimes, I'm like, did my sex drive die? Like, did I just hit an age where my sex drive died? If like sometimes I have that thought and I go, no, this is actually what it feels like to feel fulfilled. Like I've never not been hungry. So the first time that I wasn't hungry and I actually like ate a real meal, I was like, where's my hunger? Where's my sex drive? Like, this is weird. I'm not craving it in a way that I've craved literally my entire life. So now what can I do? I can actually like work on things other than sex. I can think about things other than sex because I know I'm going to eat these meals and because we're in a healthy place. But to get there, I had to surrender. I had to let it all go. Like I had to let go of expectations. I had to let go of the pleasure and go, I'm going to trust fall here. And if I trust fall and I become so sturdy, and I'm treating sex as this holy, sacred thing, then you're going to eventually come to me in a way. And it took a long time, but what do you want? You know, you want to chase cheap sex forever and constantly be in this battle in your relationship of how often we're doing. When I used to remember, and most men are probably like this, they probably know the last time they had sex with their wife or their partner.
Like the amount of days
They're
ago
counting
that it
days.
was. Yeah.
They're counting days. If you're a man who's counting days, you are stuck. I do not remember. We could have had sex 2 days ago. We could have had sex 10 days ago. I don't remember. And it doesn't matter anything for my ego because I'm not hungry. Like I'm full. My meal is sustaining and it's going to come when it comes and I'm trusting that.
Yeah, I think one important thing to say is this didn't happen overnight. You read that book in true Dave fashion. When something clicks in you, it clicks in you and you change faster than anyone I've ever met. So that change in you happened like snap. You acted completely different towards me. It took me so long. And so I say that because I don't want, like, the point of this episode isn't for someone to go, oh, I get it now, or like a wife to send it to her husband or girlfriend or boyfriend and be like, see here, listen to this. Now we should have a better sex life. Like, no. It takes time,
a lot of time,
and effort, and rebuilding that trust, and really like deprogramming your past beliefs. And so it's not just a overnight thing. I think this point is to say it can be done. Here's some of the ways that we were able to do it.
Yeah, and like I'll say this, my experience, the moment that it did click for me when I was reading that book, I was in the hammock outside and I was reading this book. You were gone, you were like for the day. And I'd already been working on this issue for a while. So I'd already been in the process of trying to wait for the meal, but then I was reading this book and it like reaffirmed it all. And I grieved. I fought and wrestled with God about it because what I learned was that the thing that I'd always been chasing, which was the pleasure, which was the ice cream, it was basically not what I thought it was. And I'll never get fulfillment in the way that I thought that I would get it, you know? Like it's not achievable there. It's this other deeper thing. And that was a really hard reality. It's a grieving. It's like working your way up in a career to make a certain amount of money, and then all of a sudden you have millions of dollars and you realize that it didn't mean anything. Like it wasn't the thing you were chasing anyway. And that's really like just devastating. And so I literally like had to stop reading the book. I like rehung the hammock differently. I was like I remember if somebody had a video camera of me walking around the yard, I would have looked like a madman. Like I think at one point I threw the book on the ground. I'm alone in the yard and I'm like throwing the book, like stomping around like a child because I'm like, and I remember like fighting with God, like what in the world? Like sex isn't what I thought. Like it's not just pleasure. And it's like, no, sex isn't just pleasure. I felt like God say like, no, sex isn't just pleasure, son. Like it's actually like a spiritual thing between you and your wife. And so in giving it up and like realizing that, and that's what they taught us in church, but I just feel like they didn't do a good job explaining, at least in my church. They were very much like, you're going to lust and don't lust. And it's like, that's not the reality. Like,
I think it was, at least my experience of how it was taught in church, was through such a shaming lens that, like, I don't really remember a lot of the teachings about the beauty and the goodness in it. I really just remember being in youth group and they like gave us a piece of paper and it was like a heart. Every time you have sex with a different person, rip a piece of this heart and like put it on the ground. And if you have so much sex, then you're left with no heart and you're just empty. Like that's what I remember how it was taught. It was just so shaming, which I don't think we'll have time to go into. That was a lot of the work I had to do, was deprogramming the shame around sex. But all of that to say, like, I think the way that it was, and that could be an entire different episode, could be kind of our take on church and evangelical Christianity. We haven't really gone into a lot of that, but I think that the way we were taught about it was lacking depth.
Well, and here's my take on why real quick, because I do think it's pertinent. I believe that the people that I know this because the pastor of my church growing up that was teaching this stuff, like he ended up getting fired because he had a porn addiction. So like he obviously didn't have it figured out, right? He had a leaky
Therefore,
energy.
it wasn't taught correctly.
Yes, because like if I'm sitting here telling men, hey, wait, don't lust. You see a girl running and with big boobs and hanging out, and don't lust at her. Like that's not going to come across well if I'm lusting and I have lust in my heart, you know? Like I'm just telling you, don't do it. But that's not what I'm sitting here saying. I'm saying that's ice cream. That's not even ice cream. That's
a fruit
like,
roll up.
That's a fruit roll up. Yeah, like it's not even good. You know what I mean? Like
no, like gets stuck to the roof of your mouth.
Yeah, and so I'm saying it from a place like I believe, and I'm a guy who pursued sex as a kid and had sex at like 14, and then went into evangelical Christianity, like didn't have sex at all and thought it was bad, and then got married young and then got divorced and then had sex, had one night stands because I didn't know what was going on. And I didn't have a clear view of my own sexuality. And I obviously didn't have this understanding, and then tried to do it right finally with you and have achieved a greater understanding and a deeper level of connection than I ever thought was possible. And so I'm not sitting here and saying that our sex life is perfect. And I'm not sitting here saying that in 5 or 10 years we won't even have achieved deeper. I actually think we will, because we'll keep going, right? And we'll keep treating it healthy, and we'll keep treating it sacred. And so we'll probably will get to deeper levels and hopefully do more episodes on it. But right now I'm sitting here saying like, whoa. So if a man in the church got up there and said, hey guys, like I know that girl's like hot, you think she's attractive, you're lusting, your mind wanders or whatever. I'm telling you, if you keep playing into those patterns, it's going to ruin the deeper connection that you can have, which is so freaking good. Like if he got up there and was like, the sex I have with my wife is so connecting, so sacred, and it actually fills me for days. It doesn't fill me for an hour. I don't feel depleted after. It fills me for days. Like I feel like a man. I feel freaking great. Then I'd be like, oh, that might be worth waiting for. Like that might be now he's selling me on, and that's what I'm trying to say is like there is deeper levels. And I had never really met anyone that was saying that. They were always like, sex is just fun, and then you can have it with your wife and it's fun and it's better with your wife because it's safe or whatever. Like they weren't really selling it for good reasons. But I'm saying if you get the true connection, like I've found like books and people like John Wineland teaches on this, and really teaches on like healthy sexuality. And when you get to these deeper sacred masculine and feminine polarities, it's greater than the girl running on the boardwalk and the thoughts that you could have it's better than the lust. It's better than any of that, It doesn't matter if you're in lingerie. It doesn't matter if your makeup's on. It doesn't matter. None of that matters. It's the deeper sacred thing that's actually like 1,000 times better. And then you're not a slave. I think that's like almost the biggest reward. Like you're not a slave to your sexuality anymore. You're not a slave to the craving. And that's like,
I think actually the word might even be addiction.
yeah.
It's breaking that addiction of like, I need this to be okay.
Yeah. And so many men are quietly addicted to sex, inside of their own marriages, inside of their own. And like, I don't want to shame anyone for that. Like, I want to say that's really normal, and it's actually like sad how normal it is. But it's if you have thoughts and lust, if you're struggling with lust, there is a way out. It's hard. I mean, reach out to us. Like I that's one of the areas that I definitely feel called to help men in, is battling their sexuality, because it enslaved me for so long, Hopefully that landed.
Yeah. It's often seen as this like sex sells, yeah, fun, light-hearted thing to talk about. But I think that's really just cheapening it.
Yeah, and like it doesn't have to be like when we say sacred, I think a lot of people think like don't talk about it, and like it's something that you keep in the dark. Like that's not what we're talking about. It's definitely something that we talk about all the time, and it shouldn't. I'm not a fan of it being something that's made to feel weird about or anything like that. It needs to be out there in the open of like we're all dealing with this. And like I'm not even fazed by somebody saying like that they watch porn. Like I would be like, okay, that's where you're at, like you're getting your needs met through this way. And is that the way you want to get your needs met? Do you think that is actually meeting your needs, or could there be a better way to get your needs met? And I think that's just like that's the thing that nobody wants to face themselves on. Like they don't want to face themselves in a journal and go, pros and cons list, meeting my sexual desires through porn or trying to build a healthy sex life with my partner. Like do the pros and cons list. Pro, porn you can have whenever you want, like a child. And you can like that is a pro for the side of watching porn. Like you can get your needs met whenever you want. You don't need anyone else. But face yourself, Go get the sex life you want to have. And I promise you, if you look at it from a standpoint of what would make you proud of yourself, like who would your future self be more proud of? It's 100% going to be build a healthy sex life with a partner. I just don't believe that anyone's really proud of themselves for watching porn, I don't want to shame people for it, but I want to say like, just do the thing that you want to do. Chase the life you want. And for me, I wanted to get to a point where I had called in love, and I wanted to earn the respect and love of my partner. and I wanted you to be sexually attracted to me. Like deep down, that's what I wanted. I didn't really want to have sex 3 times a week. I thought I wanted that because I thought that meant you were sexually attracted to me. But really, I just wanted to know you were sexually attracted to me. And I would say, without a doubt, I believe you're more sexually attracted to me today than you ever have been in my life, like in our relationship. And that's not because of anything other than me letting sex go and letting it be an open conversation and something we build together.
Yeah, it's actually kind of funny because it's very much that simple principle of when you let go, things come back to you.
Yeah.
And it was your trying to hold on that was pushing it away. But it was like in the just like releasing it was where the safety was found to actually want it, for me to want it.
Yeah, and that's
like
that's the trust
literally
fall.
and that's like such a basic, I don't know what you want to call it, wellness growth principle of to love is to let go. Like
Yeah.
always let go. The more you try to hold on,
It just doesn't work.
yeah.
And it comes out sideways. It comes out in weird ways. You watch people in relationships like too much PDA, or like this ego around their sex life, or like how often they have sex or whatever. And it's like, that's not where I'm coming at this from. Like I'm coming at this from such a grounded, rooted internal place of like, our connection is great. And I don't need to prove that to anyone. Like I'm not on this podcast right now trying to brag about our sex life. And I hope that that's not the way it's coming across. Like the whole point of talking about this is because I struggled with it so freaking hard my entire life and had no understanding, no upbringing, no one to say this the way that I'm saying it. And this is what I would have wanted somebody to say to me. And so I'm trying to say it in hopes that it helps men out there who are struggling and who are literally thinking about leaving their relationships or having an affair or trying to get their needs met through porn or other ways, and then having to look at their kids in the eyes when they tuck them in at night, knowing that they, are watching porn when they're on their own time or whatever. Like it just doesn't feel good, And I just say, like, there is fulfillment. It doesn't have to be white knuckling. Like there is a promised land, and it is if you trust fall and you earn the respect and the love of your partner because you show up so well for so long, and you turn it down when you see the look in your partner's eyes that they're tired. You turn it down as a man. You go, babe, don't self-abandon for me. I'm not that desperate. I'm a man. I can go without sex for another week if I need to. I'm fine. Don't self-abandon for me. Come at me when you're thirsty, like.
And that right there is the biggest turn on. Right then and there, I'm like, nah, okay, I'm good. Like it's and that's such that it's a pivotal.
And also I realize this is for this is us. This is our path forward. This is how we've gotten to this place. So I don't want to say that this is cookie cutter for everyone else. Like your masculine and feminine energies might be different. You might need to work it through a different path and figure it out. But this is what really, really, really worked for me. And I believe that it's worked for you too. But I can feel it in me. Like I feel the most healthy and balanced sex drive I've ever had, and where it's not like messing with my mind, it's not steering my mind. It's not pulling me. It's not, I feel like I don't have leaky energy. I feel like I got me right now, Love you.
Love you too.